You're trying to recover after a serious accident, and now the insurance company is telling you they will only pay your medical bills. And this naturally leaves you wondering, well, what about my pain and suffering? What about things like my lost wages? See, here in Georgia, if you don't know, every category of damages you are allowed to pursue in your personal injury case, you may be left with much less than you're entitled to. Hi, I'm Ted Spaulding. I've been handling personal injury cases throughout Georgia for over 20 years now. And in this video, I'm going to walk through the 4 categories of damages that you can pursue in a personal injury case. And the point of this is so that you aren't left shorthanded, misled, and ultimately settle your case for much less than you're actually entitled to. Let's kick things off with the first and most common category, which are medical expenses, your medical bills. When you're hurt in an accident, whether it's a car crash, a slip and fall, even a dog bite case, you are entitled to all of your medical bills against the at-fault party. Those are the medical bills that can pile up really fast. Think of the costs after an injury. You've got your ambulance ride, the hospital charges. You may have physical therapy afterward. God forbid, surgery. All of these things. You might be on crutches, in a wheelchair. You might need bracing of some sort, whether it's an arm or a leg. All of these things pile up and are your past medical expenses, your medical bills for treatment that you have received. And so you are entitled to all of this. But what if you also are told you're going to need future treatment? And oftentimes that's a surgery. You're going to need a surgery 2 years into the future. So you don't have those charges now, but you will in the future. Those are compensable as well. Just because you haven't actually paid for those yet or had the procedure, those are part of the soup, as I call it, that create the medical charges that you are going to be asking reimbursement for. So it includes those for future charges. So let me give you an example. I had a lady who was in a car wreck here in Atlanta, and she ended up having a herniated disc in her back. In the first round, it was pretty typical. It was meeting with the doctor, then a round of physical therapy, and all of that cost about $8,000. Well, after that, the doctor ordered future procedure for her, and that was a round of shots that she was going to need in the future, and the cost of that was another $12,000. Now, she hadn't incurred that yet, but we were able to make sure her injury claim and the ultimate settlement that resulted not only paid her back for the $8,000 of charges that she already incurred, but the additional $12,000 in those future, what we call surgeries, these are shots that she was going to need to have. So we got all of that for her. And that's the key here in Georgia. The law says you're entitled to the reasonable and customary treatment charges. And so it's not just what you paid, but what's reasonable and customary. And so what you end up having is insurance companies like to fight over what's reasonable and customary. These, they go through line items and say this isn't, and trying to reduce the amount of your bills. Well, that's why you need to have someone in your corner fighting against the insurance company on your behalf to get exactly what you're entitled to. And here's a tip for you. Always keep every bill, every prescription, doctor's notes, receipts, anything that you receive from the doctor there or therapist there at the time of the visit to things you'll get in the mail. Hospital bills will come in. Keep all of that. The more documentation you have, the stronger your case will be when it's time to add up all these things. You won't miss any charges of what you paid for. And if you have health insurance, you want to keep your EOBs, which is your explanation of benefits forms that will start rolling in as well as your health insurance pays some of those bills. Why? Because your health insurance is going to ask for reimbursement out of a settlement or verdict that you get in your personal injury case. This happens to every single personal injury victim in Georgia. You're going to owe something back to your health insurance. Having those records easily accessible, where you don't have to wait to request those and get them in later, puts you way ahead of the game when it's time for you to resolve those types of claims. Next up is lost wages. After an injury, many people miss time from work. They either cannot go back right away, or as their treatment gets more intense, surgeries and things like that, they miss significant time from work. Georgia law allows you to claim these lost wages as part of your damages. This includes not only just the days you actually missed, but also any future earning capacity if your injury affects your ability to work. And this includes any future days that you know you're going to miss. Let's say you have a surgery that's scheduled and you know the doctor is saying you need to be out of work for 2 weeks, all the way up to more long-term loss of capacity to work into the future. And so let me give you an example. I had a client that I was working with. He was an electrician, and he was knocked off a ladder at the job site and he broke his wrist. He had to miss 6 weeks of work because of this injury to recover, physical therapy and all of that. And so that meant 6 weeks without a paycheck. We made sure that his injury claim included every day of those 6 weeks as compensation for his lost wages. But what if your injuries keep you from going back to work at all at your previous job? So a good example, let's say you're a server and you have a knee injury because of your incident. Even though you've recovered, you can no longer stand on your feet walking around for an entire shift. So you're not able to go back as a server. So instead you take a desk job. And this desk job is not paying as much as the server position did. Well, in Georgia, you have a right to claim the difference between the job you had at the time, that's a higher paying job, and the job you're in essence forced to take to mitigate your damages that is lower paying. That difference, that is what we call loss of earning capacity. And so loss of earning capacity is a real loss, and it is very long term. This may be the rest of your life. It may not be. Maybe the doctors are saying you got to give it a couple of years and that will come back. Who knows? But for however long you can prove you're going to have this loss of capacity at that rate, you have a right to that compensation. You would not be in that position but for this personal injury incident that occurred with you. And so let's say you also lose an opportunity. These are things that are also compensable in Georgia. Well, what does that look like? Well, it could be anything from you're self-employed and you lost certain contracts that you had. You just, let's say the day or two before, signed a big contract. You're going to go off and do this work for this client. And then because of your injuries, you couldn't perform that contract. So they had to go off somewhere else. Or you lost a promotion. Or you lost a bonus because of it. If you can prove that it's related to your injuries that you lost that, so you go out and you get that proof from your supervisor, your boss, in that other incident from your prior customer, get them to testify that, yes, we had signed this contract. I was going to hire, Bob to do this. This is what it was going to pay. And we had to go somewhere else once he called us and told us, look, man, I can't do this. So that lost opportunity is also something that you have a right to if you have those losses here in Georgia. And one more thing, don't forget the small stuff, as I call it. And that's if you're self-employed or you work on commission, you can still claim lost income. It might be a little bit harder because we can't just use a pay stub or a W-2 to show exactly what it is, but we can get those contracts. We can get a history of your payments coming in over time, whether it's commissions every month or 2 months or 2 weeks even, whatever it is, we can get that proof. And just because you're self-employed or you're full commission based does not mean you don't have a right to any real losses that you have for what these are, which is lost wages. Now let's talk about the hardest category of damages to prove, but it's the biggest, the most important in my opinion, pain and suffering. So pain and suffering, what is that? That covers your physical pain, your emotional pain, things like anxiety, PTSD, all of these types of things. Sleepless nights is a good example. Your general loss of enjoyment of life, as we call it, things that you used to do that you can't do anymore, your life experiences, all of that wrapped in is your pain and suffering. That is a tough category. Why? Because there's nothing empirical about it. What we just talked about before, lost wages and your medical bills, that's empirical. We have exact numbers for these things. We can calculate them. We can even hire financial people to testify as to what those numbers are. Pain and suffering, no one can. It is the most difficult one to prove, but again, the most important. This is the biggest item of damage in most of our cases. So Georgia law allows you to pursue pain and suffering as an item of damage that you have a right and entitlement to compensation for. But again, as I said earlier, the hard part is there is no price tag that's set for pain and suffering. So for example, there's no chart or a calculator that says if you have a broken bone, that's worth $5,000 of pain and suffering. Instead, it's all about what is the real world impact of this injury to you specifically. And you probably hear this out there everywhere else because it's true. Every case is 100% different from the next one because you can have the exact same injuries, but your experience with those injuries is 100% different than the next person. You might have a lot more pain and suffering. You have to go through additional treatment, therefore more pain and suffering. You might have certain life experiences that you're doing that the next person doesn't, that you're missing out on, but that person didn't have to. So everybody's case on pain and suffering is 100% unique to them and tied to the real world experience of what they have gone through as a result of these injuries. So let me help you by painting a picture from a prior case that I had. So I represented a college athlete from Savannah who suffered, of all things, an ankle injury in a car accident. And so you would think, well, there'll be pain and suffering, but how big a pain and suffering is it for just an ankle injury? Well, it ended up being a pretty severe ankle injury. And for her, she wasn't just dealing with the medical bills and missing practices, time from school. She got word from the doctor that the injury was of a type. It was kind of like a freak injury that she may never be able to compete again. And so as you can imagine, this ramps up her pain and suffering, because she now is losing sleep every night, scared to death that her dream is now gone because of this car wreck. From a simple ankle injury in a car wreck, now you're telling me I may never be able to compete again in something that I took my entire life working toward. All of those hours, everything her parents put in to get her to the point where she got this scholarship and she was this big athlete in college, now gone because of a car accident. Can you imagine the pain and suffering that alone causes, much less will cause potentially for the rest of her life if this comes to fruition? This is what we're talking about when we talk about pain and suffering and the difference in uniqueness from case to case. Now, I'm often asked what helps to build this pain and suffering narrative, if you will, to show the insurance company just how bad your pain and suffering is. Well, the easiest way is keep a journal. And this is like an injury type journal that I would want you to keep. And what I tell my clients is, look, you don't have to write everything down every single day. You don't even have to have an entry every day. But when there are big things that happen, notable things, today's worse than yesterday. Ooh, today I couldn't do something that I haven't talked about before. Lost a lot of sleep tonight, feeling real groggy today, in extreme pain today versus yesterday. Here's what's happening. Went to do X and couldn't do it. Was asked to go do something with friends, couldn't do it. Those sorts of things, because you're not going to remember this a year later if your case has to go into litigation. Every single thing helps you remember and retain these things when you're then presenting it to the other side to say, here's what happened to me over the year or 2 years or however long it is of my pain and suffering, my loss of enjoyment of life, and all of those things. So a diary is really, really helpful. Insurance companies often try to downplay your pain and suffering. I'm sure that's no surprise to you. They try to argue you're exaggerating. But in Georgia, juries tend to relate to real people. I've seen cases where the pain and suffering award were several times the amount of the medical bills, especially when the personal impact was well documented and well explained by the plaintiff. Jurors are human beings. They'll pick up on this. They know when you're being authentic and true versus exaggerating to try to make your claim bigger than it really is. And see, the issue there and why insurance companies fight this side of your damages so hard is not only because it's not empirical, but because it's often the biggest item of damage. Because there's no limit set in Georgia law to what you can receive in pain and suffering. It is how much the jury says your pain and suffering is worth. That means your pain is real and you can back it up. Your compensation should reflect the real pain and suffering that you have gone through. The fourth type of damage I want to talk about that you can pursue is property damage. Now, this is one everyone knows about if you're in a car wreck. But what I want to talk about is beyond just the property damage with regard to a motor vehicle. It's the overlooked property damage in a lot of cases. And you could have it not only in a car wreck case, but in other types of cases as well. And this is the personal belongings that are destroyed oftentimes, whether it's a car wreck. I have had dog bite cases where cell phones are damaged, slip and falls with similar things, cell phones or other things that are in your pocket are damaged. So let's say, for instance, you're hit by a distracted driver, right? And you're on Peachtree Street in Atlanta and your car's totaled. That's easy. We get the car part. That is not the difficult part. Now, let's flip that and say you were in a slip and fall at a grocery store and your phone or an expensive pair of glasses that you were wearing were broken. Georgia law says you have a right to claim the cost of either the repair or the replacement of any personal property that was damaged as a result of the incident. Does not matter what that item is. If you can prove it was damaged in the incident, you have a right to either the repair or the replacement value of that item. So let me give you a real world example to put some meat to this for you. I had worked on a case for a client in a rideshare accident, and he was the rideshare driver that was hit by someone else. And after the collision, it wasn't his fault. His car went to the shop for 2 weeks. Not only did he have that claim for the repair costs and the value of that, he had totaled value for personal items that were in the vehicle as well. And we were also able to ensure that he got compensated for the personal items, the vehicle that was totaled. But guess what? He also had lost income because he didn't have a vehicle to continue to do his Uber rideshare. So what ends up happening is that lost income becomes part of his property damage claim, not his personal injury claim as a traditional lost wage in personal injury, because it wasn't related to his injuries. It was related to not having his vehicle. So it gets tied in to the property damage. And that's important because the layers of insurance are separate for property damage and personal injury. So you want to be clear on what you're pursuing and what all your losses are and what category those fall under for insurance purposes. So it leaves enough for your personal injury case as well. It's really, really important. So what counts as property damage? It covers your vehicle, and we know that, of course. It covers any electronics, personal items, again, glasses, phones, laptops, any of those sorts of things. But then it can go beyond that. I've had clothing that's damaged. I've had motorcycle wrecks where your boots get ripped at the soles as you fall off the bike. Your helmet is damaged. Your jacket is all torn up. Any of that is personal items of property that you have a right to the repair or replacement cost of those items. What you want to do to be able to prove it is hopefully you've got receipts that you've saved, or you can look up exactly what that item is and what's it selling for currently. Those sorts of things are really helpful, especially receipts. Again, some people keep them, some people don't. If you used a credit card, you can look up your credit card. That might help being able to explain it. But of course, getting that evidence sometimes can be difficult. But that's how you prove your property damage claim. Now, something else to keep in mind, back to more of your car wreck situation, is if you had to rent a vehicle while your car was being repaired, you have a right to reimbursement for the rental costs. And some people forget that. And so what you want to make sure you do is if the repairs don't fully restore your vehicle, for instance, you also have another claim. So you've got this rental value and what that costs you to get rental until your car is repaired. And then in your repair situation, don't forget you have diminished value as well. So that is the loss of the value of your car moving forward, because now you're going to have a Carfax. Now your people that you go to sell it to are going to see that it was damaged. And obviously the bigger the damage, the bigger the diminished value, because people are going to be more scared to pay full value for that vehicle. So you have that loss as well. And so this is real important when you have a newer or high value vehicle, is that you're pursuing the full value of your diminished value for that vehicle that you're now stuck with. Now, I want to give you a little bit of bonus material, if you will. We've gone through the 4 main types of damages that someone can pursue in a personal injury case in Georgia. That was medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, and of course, property damage. But sometimes, in rare cases where the at-fault party's behavior is particularly reckless or intentional, like drunk driving or road rage situations, the court might award what's called punitive damages. And these aren't damages to compensate you, reimburse you for something that you have lost. All those other items of damages are for losses strictly to you. Punitive damages are there to punish. It's a civil way to punish a wrongdoer. And again, these are much less common situations where you can pursue punitive damages. Does not come up very often, but it's worth mentioning because you never know, you might have it in your case. And it is really a valuable claim and helps in your overall value of your claim as well, if you have the ability to pursue punitive damages in your particular situation. So to recap, the 4 types of damages that you can pursue during an injury claim in Georgia are medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, and property damage. Each one is important, and the more details and documentations you have on each item of damage, the better your claim will be. Now, I always tell clients, don't leave money on the table. The insurance company is not your friend. They are counting on you to not know every item of damage and the nuance within each item of damage, because they're hoping to save money. And if you're ever unsure, your damages are, what you can pursue, what you can't pursue, it's worth talking to a Georgia personal injury attorney who could help you and give you advice on all the items of damages you have in your particular case. If you found this video helpful, you definitely want to check out our next video. How long do I have to file a car accident claim? This is one question that can make or break your claim, so you don't want to miss the video. Watch now to protect your rights and make sure you don't miss any important deadlines. I'll see you over there.